safeguards competitive environment and encourages market growth. Visit the Competition Commission's website for details. Competition delivers the prices you expect, the quality you deserve.
A lone survivor, struggling for 227 days with faith. No! A grand miracle, garnering 4 Academy Awards, Ang Lee's epic masterpiece. Life of Pi, Saturday on Pearl's Pick of the Year. Next on 60 Minutes. What happens when 100 million tons of coal ash waste spills into a river? Already a billionaire for creating an innovative cancer drug, this doctor aims to one day conquer the disease. Saturday night, 60 Minutes at 6:30 on Pearl.
Protesters cleared from occupied sites in Admiralty, but vowed to continue their fight for democracy. Police arrest more than 200 during action, but face little resistance. And a growing outrage and calls for justice over CIA torture report. Good evening. Traffic along both directions of Harcourt Road has resumed after it was occupied for nearly 2.5 months. It comes after police spent the day clearing out the main occupied protest site at Admiralty. The clear-out didn't end until after 9 p.m. Those who were among the last ones to be arrested include Federation of Students Secretary General Alex Chow and lawmaker Lee Chut-yan. The police called the clearance operation a success, saying there was no resistance to the action. Police said they arrested 209 people during the day. Officials also said they've got details of another 909, some of whom could be prosecuted later. Diane To begins our coverage.
Around 1:30 this afternoon, the police announced they would begin clearing Harcourt Road in half an hour's time.
From now till the commencement of the operation, any persons in the illegal occupied areas are free to leave. After this half an hour's time, police will lock down the occupied area.
Officers then began surrounding the Admiralty protest site. They set up cordons around Tamar Park while forming a human chain on Tin Mei Avenue.
Please leave immediately in an orderly manner.
But some demonstrators insisted on staying. This man called on the government to reflect on the situation. This elderly woman said she's out to support the students, saying they've done so much for her in Hong Kong. About an hour later, officers began moving in. Some walked up the flyover on Connaught Road Central to remove protesters' tents, many of which were empty. They also took down structures set up by the demonstrators. Other officers dismantled the barricades that had blocked the roads. A group of people staged a sit-in protest, insisting on resisting in a non-violent way till the end as part of their civil disobedience action.
If the government decides to keep pushing a fixed proposal and sell it to Hong Kong people, civil disobedience action will be repeatedly happen in Hong Kong, because we would not choose to cooperate with an unauthorized government.
After giving repeated warnings for protesters to leave, the police announced shortly after 4 p.m. they would start arresting them.
Please cooperate.
One by one, the protesters were either led or carried away by police. Officers searched each demonstrator and recorded their personal information before sending them onto police vans. Those remaining kept their arms linked as they continued chanting slogans calling for universal suffrage. Those arrested included members of the Hong Kong Federation of Students, current pan-democratic lawmakers, and former pro-democracy legislators. Others taken into custody included mixed media chairman Jimmy Lai and singer Denise Ho. Earlier Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam praised the police for conducting this operation in a highly transparent manner. She said it helped prevent misunderstandings and unreasonable accusations against the police. Diane To, TVB News.
Earlier today, bailiffs and authorized workers first carried out an injunction order to clear 3 sections of the Admiralty protest site. Protesters didn't resist, but the operation took longer than expected. That story from Rani Samtani.
It all began at around 9 this morning. Paul Tse, the legal representative of the bus company that sought the injunction, arrived with a team of bailiffs and authorized workers and read out the court order at the 3 sections involved. The police were there in case assistance was needed.
Bailiffs are authorized by the court to execute a court order. Any acts of obstructing their work will amount to criminal contempt to court.
Many protesters decided to leave.
I think this is time to live and to group up and have a next time.
That would just be the beginning of a new progress. Whether they want democracy or not, whether this Occupy Central movement is good or not, I think it is a very good education debate for all the people in Hong Kong.
Bailiffs and authorized workers began clearing out a section on Connaught Road Central at around 10:30 a.m. It took quite some time to cut through the chains, plastic cords, and plastic wrap that bound all the barriers together. The clearance of the 3 areas covered by the injunction was largely smooth, as protesters had already left voluntarily. There was a slight hiccup when People Power lawmaker Albert Chan questioned whether the bailiffs had followed proper procedure at the area outside the local headquarters of the People's Liberation Army.
In some spots, they did a very proper announcement regarding the court order, but in some locations, especially for this one, which is a major area, and they didn't do anything.
But he moved aside shortly afterwards, and the bailiffs continued their work. After the bailiffs removed most of the barricades on Connaught Road Central, several rubbish trucks were brought in to remove all of the rubbish and obstacles that were left on the road.
But given the enthusiasm of the media involved, the time taken for us to access to the barricades was a little bit more than we expected, but we done what we could.
The execution of the injunction order was expected to take about 1.5 hours, but it was not until shortly before 1 p.m. that the job was completed. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
Next, more fallout from China's refusal to allow members of a British parliamentary committee to enter Hong Kong on a fact-finding mission amid the Occupy protests. A group of senior British MPs called the Chinese move an insult and urged the government to summon the Chinese ambassador in protests. The head of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Richard Ottaway, said in a statement Beijing's decision insults the Parliament and the UK. The committee also called on London to make formal written protests to both the central and SAR governments. In Beijing, a foreign ministry spokesman said no foreign government or individual has the right to get involved in Hong Kong's internal affairs. Meanwhile, calls for prosecutions are growing following the release this week of a U.S. Senate investigation report detailing CIA torture practices. Alan Buknia reports.
The report detailed extensive torture techniques used on prisoners held at the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center following the 9/11 terrorist attacks. They included waterboarding, slamming detainees against walls, confining them to small boxes, long periods of isolation, and threatening them with death. Obama administration officials praised the release of the report.
We hold ourselves accountable to an ugly, horrible period, and we should be proud of our ability to do that.
But the Obama administration has indicated it doesn't intend to pursue criminal charges against any individual.
There was a career federal prosecutor who was assigned to this case, and that this individual conducted an extensive inquiry, and upon looking at the facts and evidence, decided not to pursue an indictment.
At the United Nations, a spokesman for Secretary General Ban Ki-moon noted the techniques used violate the UN Convention Against Torture.
The prohibition against torture is absolute. It's absolute, and it's non-negotiable.
It cannot be practiced in war, in peace, during emergencies, during internal instability, any circumstances whatsoever. And the corollary of that is people who do practice it should be brought to trial.
One of the two psychologists who devised the program said the report took things out of context. He added people should be more concerned about collateral damage caused by U.S. missile attacks.
To me, it seems completely insensible that slapping is bad, but sending a Hellfire missile into her family's picnic and killing all the children and, killing Granny and killing everyone is okay for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is, what about that collateral loss of life? And the other one is that if you kill them, you can't question them.
The two psychologists who apparently were involved are not members of our association. They're therefore beyond the reach of our ethics program. But regardless, they should be held accountable.
Alan Bookniat, TVB News.
Time magazine honored its latest Person of the Year award to a group of those fighting to stamp out Ebola. A total of 5 Ebola health workers now share in honor of being Time magazine's 2014 Person of the Year. Ebola survivor Dr. Kent Brantley is one of the recipients featured on 5 different covers of the magazine. Time said it was compelled to applaud those who knowingly risked their lives to save countless others. Back locally. A new program is being set up to help local non-Chinese speaking students obtain an alternative Chinese language qualification. It could also help them better integrate into society and boost their career prospects. Stephanie Cho reports.
From February, the Education Bureau will introduce in phases the Applied Learning Chinese scheme for non-Chinese speaking students at the senior secondary level. Students will attend 270 hours of classes over 3 years. They will learn practical Chinese in simulated service industry and hospitality settings.
The community has been telling us that there's a difficulty in the past for the NCS students to get integrated into the community. If you cannot use the language properly, you feel being isolated a little bit. Primary objective is to help them building confidence to integrate into the community and be part and real part of Hong Kong.
All 8 government-funded higher education and most post-secondary institutions have accepted the program as an alternative channel for non-Chinese speaking students to obtain Chinese language qualification.
The Education Bureau will fully subsidize schools in paying for the course fees. For the applied learning for Chinese for the CNS students need not pay the course fees.
Also stressed the course selection will not limit non-Chinese speaking students to professional development in the service and hospitality industries. He said the government will introduce more courses based on other professional settings. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
The trial of an employer accused of abusing 3 foreign domestic helpers continued at the district court today. The defense counsel accused one of the helpers, Ariana, of lying about being abused and threatened. Owen Feng has more.
On the 4th day of the trial, defense counsel Graham Harris continued to cross-examine Ariana's solicitor Ningsi, one of the foreign domestic helpers formerly hired by Law Wan Tung. Ariana told the courts that in July 2013, Law punched her after discovering she had eaten some of the children's